Hello, my name is Sarah Backley and I'm the Executive Director at the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. At the BCCJ, we represent and serve companies across over 40 industries, of which one of the largest and fastest growing is the recruitment sector. And this is why I'm so pleased to be welcoming today Tae Ho Kim, the President and Representative Director at World Japan. It was in June of last year that you joined World Japan as the President and Representative Director. Before we get started today, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you yourself and how the first, 7, 8 months has been for you in the job.
Okay. I was born in Korea, raised in Japan and the US. Education was all English, so I kind of self-studied Japanese. But I think I am totally bilingual.
I'm sure that is.
And that usually means I'm bicultural. So I have attended universities in the US, came back, started to work in Japan, moved back and forth between Japan and the US for a while. I started with American Express in Japan, and it was in my early 20s or mid-20s. The COO at the time, Lou Gerstner, who used to come to Japan a number of times, because Japan was the market at the time, growing very fast. He one day moved to become the CEO of RGR Nabisco. And it was one of the largest M&A at the time. But I was surprised in a different way because I couldn't understand how somebody selling travelers checks and travel and banking could then now move on to sell tobacco and biscuits. I was surprised by that alone. And then, of course, you might know, but his next move was to head IBM. So now crackers to computers. And again, I couldn't understand, but so asking around, I met the phrase professional manager. And seeing how he turned IBM around. On the one hand, I was very surprised at how he could do that. And on the other hand, he aspired me to be like him. I wanted to be a professional manager. Partly because my father died right when I started working. And I couldn't do anything to help him save all the companies the businesses that he started. I was too young. And therefore, I thought perhaps I could pursue a different way to make him happy up there. So since then, I moved on from an American blue chip conglomerate to a family-owned Japanese manufacturing company, try to be as different an environment as possible. I've done high-end branding type finished consumer products. I've also done a lot of selling through retailing through distribution. Worked with private equity funds. Or I shouldn't say did because I have been purchased. So yeah, but still, got involved in a number of M&As. Worked with private equity funds in terms of doing that as well as being sold. So yeah, a lot of experience, wide range of experiences.
Absolutely.
And that was intentional because I realized that to become a professional manager, the best way to be one was to have as much experience as possible, so you have lots of tools up your sleeves. You can to do a lot of difficult experiences, so that when you are in the position where you're responsible, hopefully it won't be the first time you meet or you see those situations.
Wise words.
So my definition at the time of executive manager was somebody who can make the decisions and somebody who can mobilize organizations. So it was a lot about understanding different businesses, different structures, different people. And so the more I started working in different companies and larger companies, the last one being ARC with about 4,000 employees across 12 different countries, the more I realized how difficult it is to kind of get everybody together when you have different languages and cultures.
Right. Well, that's certainly an impressive journey that you've had up until this point.
Thank you.
I must say that it's quite rare to see a president of a recruitment firm, perhaps especially here in Japan, coming in from outside the industry. So what was it that brought you into the world of recruitment, and why specifically now?
Okay, so by the way, I wish they told me that before they recruited me. So, because after I joined, I understand that this is quite rare.
Right.
But as a professional manager, one of my goals was I wanted to set a goal. So I set myself a goal being the CEO of Tier 1 Tokyo Stock Exchange company. Now Prime, not Tier 1. So I managed that in my last job. So having achieved my goal, I was still young, so I think I was young. So I said, what next? What goal to set now? I'm not really sure. I've always been interested in somehow contributing to society through work. And I kind of justify myself in my last two positions, being presidents of two difficult but trying to survive companies. And I kind of told myself, well, I'm giving something back to society because I'm saving a company, so saving the employees' life source, their employment. I'm saving the companies, their customers from unnecessary disruption, etc. But of course, with one company, there is a certain limit as to how much you can contribute. And then I met N-World, and I met this mission of enabling success. And throughout my career in different companies, I've both been a candidate and a client. I've always tried to acquire global talent and had very difficult time doing it, partially because the companies I worked at weren't that famous, of course, but it's not just that. And when I heard about N-World, where they specialize in global talent, and they had this enabling success mission, and that they were looking for a bilingual executive, they were also looking for a professional executive, and me going around different industries, didn't quite know what industry to go next. And choosing this industry, I thought, oh, it doesn't really matter because I can have all the different industries I experienced perhaps could be useful. So that's why I chose this company. So after I joined, I realized a number of things. And the first thing is that N-World's, and probably other companies similar to us in the same industry, are very sales-driven culture. And what that means particularly is if you're a sales-driven organization, you care a lot about your customers, but you're also very results-driven. And people usually do not make excuses about why they were not able to meet targets, whereas in many other large companies, people are very great at that. And on the other hand, sometimes sales-driven organizations tend to be very short-term focused because they have quarterly targets and annual targets. And they tend not to look at mid to long-term movements in business and therefore tend not to have very rich strategies. And second thing I noticed is because we are in the people business, the people, how they treat people is very different from my past experience. Very sincere, as it was witnessed making the announcement about me coming in. I saw what was prepared after I joined, and they had all the Q&As and they had different sessions to announce my entry. And lots of questions came, and they answered them, and it made me think about what I should have done in my past life, because generally, of course, everybody's nervous to change, but when your top is going to change, people are very anxious, needless to say, and they don't know what's coming on, and they want to know more about that new person coming in, and they don't, of course, they haven't even met them, but they want to know more about that person. Even if they do know more about that person, they're still anxious. And I thought, God, I should have done this in my previous companies. And the third thing I noticed, I've worked in foreign companies before, but this company, there are 28 countries represented by our employees of only 300. So we're very diverse, and we're very global, more than some of the gaishi in Japan. So that means everything from the religious aspect of the differences to sexuality, to a lot of things that D&I in our company is sort of like a natural thing, because we just have so many different people, which was a great news to me, because I've worked in very monoculture companies in the past. So yeah, it's also been a challenge for me to lead that kind of an environment and culture, because I first have to live it and breathe it. But a very new kind of challenge, and a very welcome challenge.
You mentioned global talent, and I'd like to focus on that because, as you say, N-World Japan has a particular focus on discovering and attracting global talent, both in your internal workforce and also connecting clients. Why is this so important right now? I'd love to hear your personal definition of global talent and how N-World is focusing on it today.
Global talent is a sort of a flashy word. And I think in our company today, and perhaps in the similar companies in the same industry, within the industry, when they say global talent, they generally mean people who speak English. And as you and I know, global talent should mean more than just the language capabilities. So in my mind, global talent is somebody who can succeed with different languages, different cultures, and different values. And if I kind of take a little bit of a big picture look at particularly values, because this, I think, is the toughest part where people have a hard time accepting a different version than the ones they are used to. Many people have now been accustomed to working with people with different languages or maybe culture, but values is a little bit different because it's deep in our hearts. And I kind of try to understand what that means. And if you kind of look back centuries, where people started having civilization and started to create and develop languages and physical boundaries such as oceans and mountains, and living conditions such as forests, deserts, and jungles, that made us eat different food, live differently, worship different gods, and in the old days, the festivals were very important because it kind of showed how they live and how they wanted to live, and asking to their own local gods. And that kind of differences have been sort of transferred generations after generations. So although we kind of read about it, or we kind of hear from our parents, or learn about it at work, I think deep down inside that's pretty much been formed over centuries. So of course it's not that easy to kind of say, okay, I can easily accept something different from what I'm used to. But the technological advances and all that made people movement much more frequent. Communication is now at the tip of your fingers. So more and more people nowadays, from businesses to education to even surgery, they are done alive, and they are done across borders, exposing a lot of people to differences much more frequently. And a lot of our customers and clients are those companies, global companies, and they have to work with their employees, and they have to make their employees work with other employees in similar situations where they're now exposed a lot more frequently to different types of thinking than they're used to. And that's why we think global talent is very important.
And as one of the leading recruitment partners here in Japan, can you share any secrets as to how you seek this global talent, especially here in this country?
First of all, there's actually quite an abundance of global talent within the gaishi, the foreign capital companies in Japan, and the multinational global Japanese companies abroad. And they usually come back. So there's a good pool of talent. And one of the aspects from what I said earlier about no changes is people, as you may know, they have lifetime employment in this country. And Japan has one of the smallest pool of talent in the developed world. But because of the foreign multinationals, they actually do have pretty good global talents. And search, although it looks like once you place them, it's over, it's actually, there's no start and there's no end in recruiting. You continue to have your antenna up and your feelers out, and you look for the people and whether they're happy, and if they're not, yes, and we follow their journeys. And you may not succeed in placing in the first interview, first meeting, but if you keep working, then we can actually find the right combination of the opportunity and the individuals. So that's how we try to do it. And the last piece is, this is part of our enabling success mission, but we like to give career advices to our candidates. There are many different motivations of changing jobs, and some people change because of compensation package. Some people change because of just pure geographical reason. They have to move. Some people change because of more or higher titles. But we want to make sure that we work with people who move because of a career change, that we understand the career and how we may be able to find the right fit there. Although a particular job may look extremely attractive, if it doesn't fit in that person's career development or career plan, we try not to push that kind of jobs. So that's how we succeed in that area.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Finally, just before we wrap up, I think myself and a lot of our membership who are viewing this today would really like to hear your thoughts on your personal outlook for the year when it comes to employment trends for 2023 and beyond. What are your thoughts?
Okay. One of the differences in this market in Japan has been the sort of shift in the labor force. And before I speak about the 23 aspect, if I may add a little bit about that change.
Absolutely. In recent years, I'm sure.
Yes. Japan has lifetime employment, and they have this bulk new graduate hire practices. They both came out because of the war, depleting the labor force, and I'm sure all the Western nations or any nations that participated in that war were in the same situation in those times, deficiency of men who had died in the battlefield. But Japan took a rather a different approach, I think, by saying, okay, we need educated labor force, but that takes time. We can't wait because we have to reconstruct the country. And then if that's the case, we'll just hire a bunch of them and train them and educate them ourselves the way we want to educate them. So hence the bulk hiring started of the new grads, and the country or the government actually tried to protect the workforce by making it extremely difficult to fire anyone, lay off. So that has created lifetime employment. And these two were definitely part of the Japan's economic miracle. Very high skilled, loyal workforce working with the company versus working against the company in certain situations. That has started to change, A, because we have a shrinking population, B, because the Japanese companies have to compete with their foreign competitors who can easily shut down a plant and lay people off at their will. Although it's not that simple, I know, but, but they can do it much easier than the Japanese counterparts. And thirdly, because the Japanese youngsters started to see their parents being laid off and started to see the foreign competition coming in with a lot of different ways of training you or hiring you, or of course firing you. But they've seen that and they no longer want to spend their entire life with one organization. So that has sparked a growing sort of a candidate pool in this country. So having said all of that, that differences in the market trend is definitely continuing into next year. I think the foreign companies that have once moved out of Japan to the other Asian countries for their Asian headquarters have now started to revisit Japan because in those days Japan was expensive, particularly for foreigners to be expatriated. Now Japan isn't that expensive. And this is a country with very low political risk. So they have started to revisit that, and that again would put more demand on global talents. And the Japanese global companies are now saying, yeah, we can't wait to grow and develop our own global talent. We have to now get them. So those three factors are kind of moving around, and I believe that demand will continue to be strong, if not stronger, in 23.
It's lovely to hear your optimistic view of the years ahead. I mean, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I'm sure our members would love to hear more if possible. Can you tell us a little bit more about how we can, learn more about N-World, things that are coming up at your company?
Sure. We have a website, company website, which actually is going through a renovation right now.
Right, exciting.
We'll have a new one pretty soon, hopefully. And we also have the YouTube channel that people can access. So.
Wonderful. I'm sure we'll also be featured on your YouTube channel before too long. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.